So let's listen to a terrifying and chilling story of a truck driver in this video. My name is Yamin, and by profession I am a truck driver. I am the only son of my parents, and I live in a small suburban village near Balakot. We are mountain people. My parents raised me with great hardship and struggled to educate me so that I could become something in life. Since childhood, I had a strong desire to become a support for my parents in their old age. I came from a poor family, and I wanted to improve the conditions of my home. I started working at a company where my job was transportation and driving. I was assigned to deliver goods from Balakot to Naran Kaghan. I had already done truck driving before, so this job was not new to me. The company gave me a small test, which I passed easily, because the place and the route where I had to deliver the goods were extremely dangerous. Let me tell you, Balakot and Naran Kaghan are areas where heavy snowfall and landslides are very common. Since I myself belonged to a mountainous region, I was used to such roads, so I passed the test without any difficulty. The company was paying me well, and I was very happy. My journey had begun. Along with me was a helper, a young boy from my own area. I had hired him as my assistant. It was the harsh winter month of December, and in mountainous regions, snowfall and rain were at their peak. I set out with the truck. The conductor boy who was with me, his name was Gulsher, was from my own area. Like me, he was also fond of adventure. At his request, I took him along with me. Having him by my side made me feel happy and at ease. This task was a challenge for us from the company because we had to transport the goods through these dangerous routes and deliver them safely to Naran. We were strictly instructed to complete this task. Otherwise, we could face serious loss. My truck had started moving along the highway. Without caring about the heavy snowfall and extreme cold, I began my journey. If we completed this task successfully, it could open doors of success for us in the future. Our truck was moving along a road completely covered in snow. Heavy snowfall was pouring down, and everywhere around us there was nothing but snow. The entire area looked white and lifeless under the thick blanket of snow. The day had ended and evening had begun. As we kept moving forward, silence and emptiness surrounded us from all sides. Darkness was slowly taking over, and we had moved far away from any populated area. Despite the danger, both of us were enjoying the snowfall. Soft, round flakes of snow were hitting the windshield of the truck. I was driving slowly and carefully because the road had become extremely slippery. As we continued, the snowfall grew even heavier. I couldn't help but think, what if we got stuck in this storm? The road was extremely dangerous, with sharp and risky turns everywhere. Gulsher also seemed quite nervous. Every now and then, I reassured him, saying, "Don't worry, I have experience driving on these roads." Night was advancing rapidly, and a deep silence had taken over everything. The route we were traveling on was extremely demanding, a path meant only for skilled and heavy drivers. Usually, this highway was used by trailers and trucks, but that night there was no traffic in sight, not even at a distance. As far as the eye could see, there was nothing but endless snow. The noise of the strong, stormy winds was growing louder. The icy winds had now become even more aggressive. Because of the heavy snowfall, my truck's speed was gradually decreasing. Thick fog had taken over everything, creating an eerie and suffocating atmosphere. The road was long and extremely dangerous, and we were completely alone on it. On one hand, the weather was getting worse by the minute, and on the other, I was worried about delivering the goods safely on time. But due to the snow, my truck was no longer moving. It was crawling. A deep sense of fear began to creep into my heart. There are things in life that seem easy, but in reality, they are not, and I was experiencing that very truth. I was familiar with this route, but I had never traveled here during such heavy snowfall. In fact, most drivers avoided coming here in these conditions. The snow was so dense that nothing was visible. It was impossible to understand the road. Wherever the eyes could reach, there was only snow. Tall, thick trees stood on both sides, completely covered in white. It felt as if the entire valley was wrapped in a blanket of snow. The cold had become unbearable, and both of us were shivering. And then, we started hearing strange animal sounds from the darkness. It felt as if we might soon come face to face with wild animals. From all around us, we began to hear the sound of dogs barking. A thought crossed my mind. What if these wild creatures attacked us? My truck was still moving very slowly. We were completely frozen, our bodies stiff from the unbearable cold, as if life itself had started to slip away. And then, as we kept moving forward, my eyes suddenly caught something far in the distance. A faint light. The light was coming from far away. I slowly turned my truck toward the other side. There was a narrow path leading in that direction. As I looked ahead, I was shocked. Right beside the path, there was a small graveyard, and just a short distance beyond its main gate stood a small wooden house. I couldn't help but wonder, what kind of brave person would build a house so close to a graveyard? We had a flashlight with us. As I looked carefully, I noticed a lantern hanging outside the house, fixed to a nail, and it was lit. We carefully made our way past the graveyard, trying to avoid stepping too close to the graves, but something strange happened. From the outside, the graveyard didn't look very big, yet as soon as we stepped inside, it suddenly felt enormous. It was as if graves were everywhere, wherever we placed our feet. There was a grave beneath us. A wave of fear ran through us. We finally reached the wooden house, the source of the light. As we got closer, it became clear that the glow was coming from that lantern. I said softly, "It seems like someone is inside. That's why the lantern is still burning." It was already very late. We couldn't go back, and moving forward in that condition was impossible. I looked around and decided that we should stay there for the night. We could leave at dawn after getting some rest, and maybe by morning the snowfall would ease. With that thought, I walked up to the door and knocked. No response. We looked at the house. It was made of old wood, worn out with time and strangely built, almost unnatural. I knocked again. Suddenly the door opened. Standing there was a young woman, around 20 or 22 years old, strikingly beautiful. She was dressed in black, wearing a long coat and holding a lantern in her hand. She looked at us with questioning eyes. Her eyes were large and oddly unsettling. Then she spoke, her voice deep and echoing. "Who are you looking for?" There was something in her tone, something not quite right. Feeling slightly nervous, I replied, "We need shelter for the night. Because of the heavy snowfall, we can't move forward. We'll leave as soon as morning comes." She listened to me carefully, then paused for a moment, as if thinking about something. After that, she stepped aside and allowed us to come in. Gulsher and I entered the house. As soon as we stepped inside, we noticed something strange. The house was much bigger from the inside than it appeared from the outside. On one side, there were 4 rooms, and all the basic necessities were placed there. She led us into one of the rooms and said, "You can stay in this room. I live here with my old mother." I looked at her and asked, "Is there no one else living here with you?" She stared at me for a few moments, silently, in a way that made me uncomfortable. Then she replied, "No. Apart from my old mother, I have no one else in this world." I glanced around and asked again, "Why is there no other house here besides yours?" She answered, "No, there are other houses. Other people live here too." Hearing this, I was stunned, because in that deserted place, this seemed to be the only house. There was nothing else around, except the graveyard. After saying that, the girl quietly walked away, leaving us alone in that strange room. We looked around. The walls of the room were worn out and decayed, and a strange, unpleasant smell filled the air. Maybe it was just the damp, moldy smell of the room. We looked around carefully, examining every corner. There were 2 wooden beds Sharpoys placed inside. We took off our shoes, which were covered in snow, cleaned them, and placed them to one side. We were completely exhausted. Gulsher immediately lay down on one of the beds, but I was feeling something strange, as if my 6th sense was warning me there was danger here. Something bad was about to happen to us. Still, I lay down, looking around uneasily. Gulsher had already fallen asleep, and the sound of his snoring echoed in the closed room. I was also extremely tired, and soon I drifted into a deep sleep. I had barely fallen asleep when I suddenly felt as if someone had shaken my bed violently. Startled, I woke up and sat upright. I looked around. Gulsher was fast asleep. Thinking I was just tired, I lay down again. But after a short while, I felt someone pull my toe hard. Terrified, I jumped up and looked around. There was no one in the room except me and Gulsher. My heart was pounding. I got up, opened the door, and stepped outside. Just then, I felt as if a shadow passed quickly right in front of me. It moved so fast that I couldn't see it clearly. I checked my watch. It was 2 a.m. Oh God, there's still so much time until morning, I thought to myself. I couldn't understand what that shadow was, or what was happening in this mysterious house. I looked around. It seemed like a lounge area, with furniture placed around. But the furniture was covered in thick dust, as if no one had lived there for a long time. Then a thought struck me. If no one lived here, then who was that girl who brought us inside? And where was she now? She had said that she lived here with her old mother. But now, neither the girl nor her mother was anywhere to be seen. There was only silence, deep, suffocating silence everywhere. Suddenly, I felt a hand on my shoulder. I jumped in fear. Turning around, I saw Gulsha standing behind me, looking at me with confusion. I told him what had happened, and he too became frightened. He said that someone had woken him up in the same way. Now sleep was completely gone from our eyes. Slowly we walked forward, until we stopped in front of a room. The door was slightly open, and faint rays of light were coming from inside. Gathering our courage, we stepped closer. I slowly pushed the door open with my hand, but there was no one inside. The room was completely empty. I couldn't understand where the light had been coming from, and within moments, that light faded away. Then strange and terrifying sounds began to echo. Those sounds kept getting louder and louder. They felt very close. Suddenly, a strong gust of wind rushed into the room, even though, just moments ago, everything had been completely silent. There were no windows in the room. So where did that wind come from? A chaotic noise of swirling air filled the space. The walls were cracked and broken in many places, and thick cobwebs covered every corner. I was confused. If someone really lived here, why hadn't they cleaned any of this? Gulsha and I felt something deeply unsettling. As I stared closely at the walls, I began to notice strange shapes forming within them, shifting, moving. Then I felt it again. A dark shadow passed by, and this time, it stopped right beside us. Before our eyes, that shadow began to take shape. It transformed into a horrifying woman. A scream escaped both of us. Fear took over completely. Our voices turned into broken, unrecognizable sounds. She was terrifying. She let out a loud, chilling laugh. Her height reached the ceiling, and her long, black hair hung all the way down to the floor. At that moment, I realized we were trapped. Suddenly, the door behind us slammed shut with force. Now I was certain. This was the end. We hadn't come to this place by chance. This house had brought us here to die. That monstrous woman stood before us, laughing loudly. And then, she attacked me. Her hand gripped my throat, lifting me into the air. My feet dangled helplessly. My head began to spin. A loud ringing filled my ears. Everything started going dark. Gulsha tried desperately to save me, struggling and shouting. But it was useless. Darkness closed in around my eyes. And after that, I remember nothing. When I opened my eyes, we were outside the house, lying near one side of the graveyard. Gulsha helped me sit up. We had no idea how we got there. Slowly, the memories of the night returned. The girl who brought us inside, that horrifying woman, the shadow that kept passing by. Everything came rushing back. But one question remained. How did we get out? I clearly remembered that the creature had attacked me. I placed my hand on my throat. Pain shot through my body. There were deep bruises on my arms, neck, and all over my body. They were extremely painful. On my arms, there were marks, as if someone had clawed me with sharp nails. Holding each other's hands, stumbling and barely able to walk, we made our way out of the graveyard and finally reached our truck. Without wasting a second, we climbed inside. I quickly started the engine. Gulsha said in a panicked voice, "Yamin Bhai, get us out of here fast!" Everything about this place feels haunted. I looked around. This deserted place had only that one house. There was nothing else, just deep, suffocating silence everywhere. I pressed the accelerator. The cold was unbearable. Gulsha poured some kawa from a thermos into 2 cups and handed one to me, hoping it would bring some warmth back into our bodies. We had barely driven a little further when suddenly, the truck jerked violently. My eyes were fixed on the front mirror. And then, right in front of the truck, I saw the same girl, holding a lantern. Beside her stood an old woman. Both of them were signaling us to stop. Gulsha shouted, "Yamin Bhai, don't stop. Drive, this place is cursed." Without hesitation, I sped up the truck. After a few moments, I glanced back, and what I saw froze my blood. The girl's shadow was stretching, unnaturally long. My heart nearly stopped. I pushed the truck faster, racing through the empty road. Then suddenly, we saw a group of people carrying a funeral. They were all dressed in white, their faces covered with cloth. But something was wrong. Their height. They were unusually tall. I slowed down the truck slightly as they passed in front of us. They didn't even look at us silently. They crossed our path and disappeared. At that moment I knew they were not human, and this entire place was cursed. One terrifying event after another kept happening, and our minds were unable to comprehend any of it. I began reciting whatever verses from the Quran I could remember. Then suddenly, we saw signs of habitation ahead. Without wasting time, I turned the truck away from the deserted path and drove toward the other direction. We had narrowly escaped. Soon we reached a nearby petrol pump. We got down for a while and sat on some charpoys placed there. The owner of the petrol pump asked, "Where are you coming from?" I told him everything that had happened. After listening, he said, "You took the wrong route. There is no settlement there. Only a graveyard. It's a deserted place, inhabited by spirits. No human goes there." Hearing this, I thanked Allah from the bottom of my heart that He had kept us alive and brought us back safely. Otherwise, who knows what would have happened. After unloading the goods, we returned home. But for a long time I remained haunted by that experience. Even now, whenever I close my eyes, that entire night comes back before me, and even today, I still tremble in fear when I remember it.